So before you do, um, Good afternoon, people in the room and those that might be streaming this live community meeting. My name's Keith O'Brien. I'm the incident controller at the Traralgon ICC, and I've been managing the event for the last couple of days. We're here today to try and share as much information both ways with you in the community as to what's happened, what's likely to happen, and what we might be able to do to help and assist, etc. So I've got a panel of speakers which I'll introduce in a minute. So we will have an opportunity for questions from the room. And I'll just, for the people who are online, I'll ask Lauren Carey from the Council to explain how you can engage and have your questions addressed as well. Lauren?
Thank you, Keith. Thank you for attending. For those that are online this afternoon, you're able to provide your comments or questions in the chat function of YouTube. You just pop them in there, we'll be monitoring those and we'll be able to put them towards the panel to answer. Those that we cannot answer this afternoon, if we do run out of time or are similar questions to others already raised, we'll pop them onto our website in an FAQ sheet and we'll note them on our social media for you to access as well post the meeting.
I will also note we're planning a second community meeting on Monday, so if there's things that we can't address today, as well as undertaking to get back to people with answers as quickly as we can, anything that we might have to take away and find out a little bit, we'll have an opportunity to report that back here, but we'll also be reporting it online and in what we're starting today, a community newsletter as well. So, before I'll just introduce who we've got up on the floor. We've invited some other agencies, but they're very busy with some of the things. So the second speaker today will be the CEO of La Trobe Council, Steve Piacenti. Our Divisional Area Commander from Victoria Police, Superintendent Peter Ficianto. I might have got that wrong, sorry Peter. From the Department of Family, Fairness and Housing. I'm trying to get the new name of what used to be DHHS. Lauren Burke, who's the Relief and Recovery Manager, and Energy Safe Victoria Representative Sam Barazio. We'll try and get the other agencies along at other times, or we'll take questions on notice to get search answers from those. So as I've said, we'll try and engage with people here in the room as much as possible, but also allow some time for Lauren to feed me questions from those people online as well to be able to answer by either myself or members of the panel. So I just want to set some timeline about what we know and what we're going to go through with, and I'll just search for my notes that I thought I had with me. Oh, they're there, sorry, thank you. Okay, as you know, we're particularly focusing on the Traralgon township rather than the whole of the region, but we have had 2 incident control centres across the region for flooding and storm damage for the last few days, and particularly, obviously, specific incidents here. We'll say that we are working as quickly as we can with other agencies to restore things like energy, roads, etc. But that's going to take a bit of time because we have had really significant damage. The other thing is we need to do as much work as we can in as short a time as possible. So there's a priority with all our partner agencies to do what we can for you between now and next week, because it's only a low probability at the moment. Well, there's a probability, but it's uncertain, I should say. We've another low coming across Thursday, Friday, Saturday next week. Not as severe at this stage, but we're going to watch that, and in preparation for that, we're going to keep our Incident Control Centre and Regional Control Centre active in all that time to make sure we're as prepared as possible in the region, and obviously in the more affected communities where damage might be more severe if we get more severe weather that way. So just flagging you, we're not just dealing with today, we're also looking forward. Just to summarise some of the key things, we do get flood warnings from the Bureau. It's not an exact science, the same as you've all seen severe weather warnings. They mostly are fairly spot on, but sometimes things vary. And we did get a rain event here on the Traralgon Creek that was much faster and more damaging than we had anticipated in a shorter time frame than we had anticipated. And we had a flood gauge that went along like this and then went up like that very quickly. So we also had the second episode last night and into today where there was a potential for the same thing happening, where we warned you as the community and advised for safety reasons, particularly after dark. We didn't want to go through the number of rescues that we had previously. So I will address the messaging because I know that's a concern in the community. The flood warnings were out. There was some generic stuff in there. The evacuation order was slow, and I apologise for that. I'm being upfront about that. The circumstances in that is with next to no notice, as I said, that gauge went up very quickly, which meant the river went up very quickly, or the creek. And the team in the Incident Management Centre were very focused on saving lives with vehicles in the water. And the message about it impacting on houses didn't quite get through in time because of the focus on those rescues. And as soon as we were aware of that, we put in action to send that out, and we got it out as quick as we could. I acknowledge it was late, and I apologise for that being late. We were proactive with the one yesterday, and knowing the I'll say the unpredictability of the creek here, that's why we went with that safer precaution, and we're revising the modelling and all of those sorts of things as we do after all of these things to try and reduce that risk in future. So what we've been doing in the meantime is continuing with our impact assessments so we can inform the transition to recovery and provide those recovery supports that come under the emergency management arrangements to you as quickly as possible. To date, our impact assessment, you would have seen teams around with drones and cameras and all of those sorts of things. When we move into recovery, the more accurate information we've got, including what you've provided to council when you've registered, if you've been in the affected household groups, that gets collated. It helps the council with things like putting in grant applications for relief and projects to fix things. I know the men's shed was severely damaged, and that's an important community asset for mental health and wellbeing of members of the community as well. So that will help inform early grant applications for those, as well as how we go about relief and recovery, and I'll leave Lauren to explain that. So just to share with you the information we have at the moment, we've had a total of 117 properties assessed, not all of them necessarily residential. We know that there are 60 properties with damage to structure. And damage to structure in floods is every bit as complicated as fires destroying houses, because sometimes it's not necessarily evident straight away. It might be mould later because it's got in under the plaster and a whole pile of things. So we try and get all that information as quickly as possible to help with insurance claims and with support and all of those. So that's being collated as we speak to facilitate the faster processing of all those claims, and that information will be available to the relevant people to help make those decisions. So the fortunate thing is we've got 34 properties in that 117 with no damage to the main building. Now that's no consolation to the people who've lost their sheds or whatever, but at least there's some of those houses are still habitable at this stage once the water's down, but they do have the ongoing concern in relation to that. To give you an idea of some of the challenges in getting the warnings out, in the few days that we've been putting them out, there were 333 separate warnings, and we've got a team of 4 doing that. So that's where we've had a lot of challenges, and I must say the team has done every best effort they can, and they haven't had lots of coffee breaks or anything like that. They've been very engaged in doing things as quick as they can. So I'm not going to go into other things that I think we all know very clear. We were fortunate in this town, we didn't lose a life. We did lose a life in the region where someone was in a vehicle and lost their life with driving in floodwaters. So you guys have had some personal experience, particularly in the room, of how fast that river can come up and how dangerous it can be. And I share with you the concerns about those sorts of things and where your lives might have been at risk. And we do want to do our best to try and help you. The other thing is I need to acknowledge it's a partnership in emergency management. We had great support in the rescue effort from Ambulance Victoria with their HEMS, which was the nearest one that started winching people early on. We got the police search and rescue teams actively involved very quickly, which we pre-deployed the night, and the SES Swiftwater rescue teams and the like. And a number of those people, particularly our local SES and our SES that came from across the state in preparation for this incident, and our local CFA and other agencies, Fire Rescue Victoria, all involved in that, along with Victoria Police helping out as well, and the other government agencies such as Regional Roads Victoria with road management and traffic management and the like. So it's been a very big team effort, and no one went out to make any mistakes, no one went out to put you at risk. We've done our best effort, and where we've let you down with that timing and stuff like that, I acknowledge that, and we have a lessons learned framework in our organisation. We've already started assessing how we can make sure that that's less likely to happen in the future. So I won't take questions just at the moment. I'll let each of the speakers, and then we'll open the floor to the questions. So if I can call on Steve Piacenti from La Trobe to outline the council's position at the moment.
Thanks, Keith. Thanks for everybody for attending. Those people online joining us. Also, thank the panel who've come today to provide you with any information. Also, just acknowledge my mayor just popped into the room, Councillor Gibson. So welcome, Madam Mayor. So it is obviously a difficult time for many. Obviously, there's a lot of impact in terms of Traralgon, in terms of flood. I think a number of the people in the room are probably represented in that group. But there's also groups outside of that in terms of the broader La Trobe City, and we've been dealing with a number of impacts across the city. So particularly like to thank emergency services, obviously, who've been working tirelessly, also my staff and the community members who got out there as well and did their bit in terms of clearing roads and the like, because that was something that, particularly with this event across the city, has been particularly challenging, has been a busy time. For those impacted properties, definitely feel for you all. And from a council perspective, we'll look to provide what support we can as we move, particularly from the relief operations into recovery. We are still working through a number of impacts on certainly in some of the remote areas. There's a number of roads that we're still working on clearing. Some of those rely on SP AusNet in terms of helping us with that, but that's particularly in the south side of the municipality, so we're still working through that. We've also, and Keith touched on this, had a number of community facilities that have been impacted. Definitely feel for those community groups who've been impacted. They put tireless effort into running those centres, and it is very difficult when you see an event like this come through, and so we'll be looking to work with them into the future. So there's obviously, as you would know, road closures and the things that are still occurring across the city and a clean up, but there might still be issues that we're not aware of, and so there are people, and I experienced this myself, had no power or internet or phone connection for a period of time, so we still know there are some people that might be in that situation. There might be issues that we're not aware of, so they can contact us through our 1300 367 700 number, or they can email us now, set up a special email address. Also in terms of questions as well that people might have, not just in terms of current issues, but that's flood2021@latrobe.vic.gov.au, so people can connect through us with questions they might have, as well as any issues that are current. So it's a bit of an introduction. In terms of relief activities from a council perspective, we have, through the Incident Control Centre, had a relief centre set up for a period of time helping people. So some of you in the room might have already been in contact with us and registered. So there's been 41 people, but if there's still others that need to have support. I know a lot of people go to family and friends and get support that way, but there might be others that still need some assistance. There are personal hardship grants that are available and to eligible impacted individuals, and that's through Department of Family, Fairness and Housing. They changed their name. So, and we've been providing support in terms of short-term accommodation, access to medication, food and clothing. I think the Mayor was even delivering some food parcels today, so that's still ongoing. For those people in the broader community who don't have access to hot water, for example, due to power outages, we did set up our leisure centres, so just making people aware of that. Churchill wasn't available today because the power was off, but will be available tomorrow. Traralgon at the new G-Rack Centre, Moe Newborough Leisure Centre and our Morwell Leisure Centre. And so also if people are having difficulty with access to power and water, have lost food, they can contact us and we'll see what support we can provide. In terms of the power being off for a period of time, there's food disposal. It's become a bit of an issue, so we have provided that access for food disposal at our transfer stations. I think the Morwell transfer station wasn't available for a period of time in terms of being accessible, but that is available for people if they show their driver's licence in the broader community in terms of having to dispose of food. And most people would probably know GERF have set up a fundraising campaign, and so people can connect in the community in terms of generating donations for relief, and I think they've already provided some support. So in terms of the immediate relief, they're the things that we're currently doing. In terms of the longer term recovery, and Keith touched on the relief activities in the Incident Control Centre will probably continue operating for a little bit, but in terms of recovery activities, Council's got a pretty critical role in that, working with all the other government agencies to support the community. So that impact of assess impacted properties is critical for us, so there'll be some assessments undertaken by a range of council staff. We will look to establish a program for flood storm impacted residents to take damaged materials and the like for a way for disposal, and so that's a process we'll work through. We'll also work with people to find out what resources they need and support they need in the community in terms of recovery, and that will most likely link into potential grants hopefully becoming available. So we've got some work to do with the government and our partners to establish what is available and work with the community to be able to provide those. In terms of recovery, we'll provide a drop-in centre is the plan, most likely at our library here in Traralgon, and we'll publish the hours of operation of that once we get to that point, and that's, as I said, a bit more of a longer term. Also longer term, normally with recovery, we establish community recovery committees, so that's something we'll be looking to do, and that will most likely involve, and there are some impacted businesses as well as obviously community organisation, as well as there'll be some community representatives as part of it, so it'll be a process for people to nominate to be part of that, and that is looking at then the things that we might do to support the community in the longer term. So they're the sort of things we'll be looking to do. There's a bit of work to be done obviously in the short term, continue to provide relief, and then as we move into that recovery phase, Council sort of takes over in that role, and we obviously rely on our government partners to help support that in terms of funding and the like. So there's a fair bit of work ahead of us. From a council perspective, we'll be doing the most we can to support the community in that recovery. So that's probably enough for me, Keith, in terms of the short term, but I'll be able to take questions as well later from the panel and people online.
Thank you, Steve. So thank you with that. As I said, we'll get some information. I have already had some questions passed to me, which we'll come to when we start answering questions. So if at this stage I can ask for the Police Divisional Area Commander, Superintendent Peter Fascinato, please.
Good afternoon. My name's Peter Fascinato. I'm the Divisional Area Commander as of today, acting whilst my boss is on leave. Look, I know there's a lot of angst in regards to what occurred on Thursday around the messaging and the pre-warning and things of that nature, and I guess probably to try and put it in a little bit of context, I've been a police officer now for 35 years, and I've worked in this area for 33 of those years across both Latrobe, Baw, Bass Coast and South Gippsland. So as you can imagine, over 35 years, and the people that here are long-term residents would understand that every year we go through some sort of emergency incidents of these nature, be it fire, floods and other things of that like. This is probably the fourth flooding we've had of Traralgon, and we did a lot of pre-work in regards to the available information that was provided to us in what was coming. We've got flood overlays, things of that nature. So we did a lot of work around that in preparedness for it, but again, it's the worst flood that I've ever seen, and the information that was available to us at the time certainly didn't indicate that we were going to get it. But when you wake up on Thursday morning after doing all that great work and find out that 270 mils has dropped on Mount Baw for the first time ever, it's a little bit frightening. And a little bit sooner than what we anticipated based on the information that was provided to us. So that resulted in what was basically a rapid response. We'd organised 30-odd local personnel uniform members to respond to it in support of the support agency, the control agency being SES. We quickly had to ramp that up to 50. We've got people out of the INR in plain clothes. We've got extra watch house keepers. We've shut stations down to make sure that we had enough people to respond to your community. We were very fortunate. Based on evidence of other floods, not only here but across the state, we were fortunate enough that the search and rescue deployed 15 rapid response staff from the Water Police into the area on the night before, and that wasn't to get you out of your house. That was based on the evidence that the risk to people who make stupid choices, let's say, or unfortunate choices where they decide that they can drive through water, get stuck, and unfortunately, as was touched on by Keith, we did lose a life in our neighbouring division. That's what they were here for, because the evidence shows that that's the greatest risk to people. Fortunately, they were here because of the impact that was to your community. We were able to assist people to get out of their houses, especially across the elderly section, that there was no anticipation that they were going to be impacted. And again, to probably put that in perspective, obviously we do a lot of pre-warning and safety advice to our members, trying to give them an understanding of what's coming and what they may face, because we have had an influx of a lot of new members that probably have never experienced a flood of this nature before, or even emergency events. We've got a lot of people that live from the metropolitan area. But we actually had people living within that flood zone that actually had to be rescued by our rapid response team. So, you know, when I talk about preparedness and advice and all the things of that nature, sometimes you just get caught with your pants down, unfortunately. But I think, you know, to a credit to the response once it did arrive, the teamwork amongst all the agencies and the cooperation across the community, the Shire response with the relief centre, it all pretty well worked seamlessly. That's no good to you. You're going home to your houses, which are inundated and inhabitable, and we'll work with you and make sure that we look after them. If you can't live in them, we'll make sure that we look after them and protect them, and people don't come along and loot your homes and take advantage of the situation, which we've experienced in the past. We will do all those things for you, and we'll make sure we work with our partner agencies to support them to provide you with the best assistance we can moving forward. So that's where we are. You know, 70 odd police assisting the SES on that day. We again had similar numbers teed up for today based on the information. Fortunately for all of us, that didn't occur. We're now looking at you know, road closures are starting to minimise. We've got to get those roads assessed, make them safe. We'll do that with Vic Roads and the local council to make sure. We've still got people isolated, so obviously, and also a lot of people without power. So they're probably the priorities across the agencies at the moment. Let's get access to those people that can't get out. Let's make sure they've got food and water. There's a lot of farmers, things of that nature, that can't get their milk out. So there's a lot of work that's going to be done over the next few days as part of rehabilitation to make sure that the whole community can get back to a level of where they want to be. So, you know, I've grown up in this community. I was born and bred in Yearam South, and you know, my first experience as a kid was Ash Wednesday. So I live and breathe what you've been through. Fortunately, I've never had my house flooded, so I can't live and breathe that. But I understand where you've been, and we're here to support you. And I just want you to understand that you know, a lot of work was done, and unfortunately, on times things don't go the way that you planned for. And but we're all safe. We've all got our lives. We've all got our friends. Let's now work together and get ourselves back to normality. Thank you. Cheers.
And just reminding you, all of these panellists will be available for questions shortly. At this particular point, if I can ask for the Department of Family, Fairness and Housing, Lauren Burke, the Relief and Recovery Manager, to step forward and provide some information.
Thanks, Keith, and hi everybody. Lauren Burke from Department of Families, Fairness and Housing. What a last 18 months we've had. I just want to start by acknowledging that one of the things I say at home often is that this is the year that just keeps on giving. Probably just want to acknowledge as a collective the stress and fatigue that we're all feeling given the bushfire event, the current COVID pandemic, and now the floods that we're experiencing throughout Latrobe City, but also more so widespread over Gippsland. Our role really is to coordinate relief and recovery across impacted communities, and we've been working closely with Latrobe City Shire to do that and to provide people that have been directly impacted by this event with the relief supports that they need, and I hope that we've done that well. There are various community hubs that are set up. We've talked specifically about Latrobe and the Relief Centre today, but I just want to put out there that there are actually other community hubs that have been set up across Gippsland too, just for people that are live streaming in from other areas, particularly around Bass Coast, South Gippsland area. And they're community hubs that are providing information to people about the key topic issues. When are we going to get reconnected? When are we going to have our power back on? When are we going to be able to use our phone and internets? Where can we get access to effective and clean food, clothing, etc. So we're happy to distribute information around those community hubs as well as what's available in Latrobe to people. The Department of Families, Fairness and Housing is supporting people with personal hardship needs through our FAP payments, and we are having discussions with people about that, particularly Latrobe people as we speak, and also having discussions with some residents that we're aware of that have been really heavily impacted by this particular event. I think we've all mentioned that recovery is absolutely a key area to this, and we are planning with our partner agencies what recovery looks like. In saying that, recovery needs to be community-led, and we also need to make sure that government are supporting you via connection and resources. We're really keen today, as a department and as a collective panel, to hear from community, to hear your feedback about how we've gone so far, but also to hear about what your needs are right now to ensure that we're all safe. Happy to take questions after the panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. And the last of our speakers today, if I can ask from Energy Safe, Sam Orazio, to just talk about some safety issues in relation to flooded properties.
Thank you, Keith. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sam Barazio. I'm from Energy Safe Victoria. First of all, I think it's really important that you understand that I don't represent the power companies. Energy Safe Victoria is a state government regulator, and we monitor the safety of gas and electricity right throughout the state. And when I say gas and electricity, anything from your oven in your kitchen all the way up to the gas processing plants and everything in between. Anything from the light in your bathroom right up to the power plants that make electricity for the state. So we monitor, we regulate all those areas. I guess my role here today is to talk to you all about safety and the importance of taking care, especially with power lines and power generators and also gas bottles that you might be using around the home. Safety is a very, very big issue in these circumstances. I guess I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm going to be blunt and I'm going to be, right in your face with it. You've got risk of fire, electrocution and asphyxiation, and I'll touch on those briefly. First of all, with portable generators, which I guess in these sort of situations will become very popular. They're relatively cheap to buy, they're effective, but there are risks involved. If you use them properly, as intended, you should be right. So I guess the big one is you've got to remember that a power generator or a small generator that you can buy from any of the hardware stores, essentially that is a miniature power plant. So you put your fuel in, it turns, it makes electricity. And the electricity that comes out of the little socket outlet or the power point that runs through your lead to power an electric heater or other appliance, that's at 230, 240 volts and can kill you. So you need to be aware of where you're running your leads, in particular with water. Water is a fantastic conductor of electricity. So you must be aware of the fact that what might seem just a bit of moisture on a lead, moisture on the ground, that's still a conductor. It's really, really critically important that you're aware of that and you take precautions. So that electrocution is a very real risk. Fire is another real risk. Where you place a generator, just be aware that it runs on fuel. If you put it in a dry area on dry grass, they do get hot. There's a potential risk of fire there as well. So you've got to be aware of the fact that try and locate a little bit away from the house as much as practical, and you should be right in that respect. Certainly the power generators are not designed as an indoor unit. That's I can't stress that enough. You never ever place them indoors, never place them in an enclosed area. The reason being that they can let off carbon monoxide gas, which is odourless, which is invisible, and can kill you. It does kill you. It's as simple as that. And you can die from asphyxiation. So just remembering where you place your portable generator is highly important, how you handle the extension leads and things like that that come off it, and also be aware of the appliances that you're plugging into it. The generator will have limitations. More often than not, they've got safety devices, so if you're drawing too much electricity, that safety device will cut in, usually a circuit breaker or something like that. Don't tape it down so it doesn't trip again. If it trips, there's a problem. It trips for a reason. It's a safety device. So try and work out what's going on, or perhaps maybe unplug a few appliances, and that should probably fix the problem. If you have any doubts, my recommendation would be to contact a local electrician. The power companies are having a really hard time of restoring power. I was up in Lilydale just before I got here, and there are trees down everywhere. And, you know, kilometres of power lines that have been brought down by the trees and the severe weather. It's going to take time. You know, I ask you all to be patient. Everybody is working as hard as they possibly can to restore power, but it will take time. I guess the difficulties are not only with the putting the power back up in the air, the power lines and things like that, but getting access to some of these places to replace power poles. Some of these trees that have come down across lines have snapped poles in half. And that just doesn't affect that localised area. It's obviously very widespread. I was driving through Hillsville as well this morning, and they don't have any power, not even for traffic lights through there at the moment. That's how bad it is. So please be patient. I can only imagine how difficult it must be, and my heart goes out to the community here. But please be patient. We're doing the best we can. Once power is restored, the best way to work out if power has been restored to your premises or your homes is to look at your smart meter. And if your smart meter's got a flashing red light, if your smart meter has a digital display, that means that the power is on. However, there may still be problems, especially if your house has been flooded or if water has got in and you don't know about it. In particular, when cables get wet, if you have a safety switch and there's moisture in the cable, there's moisture behind a switch or moisture behind a power point, it can trip the safety switch or it can trip a circuit breaker. The best thing to do there is just to call a registered electrical contractor, your local electrician, to come out and check it out. Please, please do not try and do your own electrical work. Please do not try and fault find. Part of my job is to investigate incidents where people are killed with electricity, and you know, it's every single job that either I've been to or that my colleagues have been to is preventable. So please be aware that it kills and not to try and do it yourself. I'll touch a little bit on fallen power lines. You must keep a very safe distance away from them. Some of these power lines throughout these regions here can carry up to 22,000 volts in residential streets. Your normal voltage in your home is anywhere between 230 and 400, but some of the power lines that feed some of the transformers, 22,000 volts. And they're in overhead power lines. So if you see a downed power line, please stay well away from it. 10 metres at the very minimum, at the very least. Get on the phone, get onto 000 and let the guys there know, and we'll get somebody out to cordon off the area. Police are great at helping us with that, but also to make repairs as soon as possible. Don't bring any outdoor gas appliances inside. Once again, carbon monoxide poisoning is a real threat, and that also includes your gas bottles. There have been instances where gas bottles have leaked in an enclosed space, whether it be a shed, a moving truck, a house, and that gas will permeate the air, and all it takes is the slightest little spark to ignite that gas, and you have a major explosion on your hands. So it's really critical. You must remember portable generators, gas appliances, for example, barbecues, gas lanterns, and gas bottles must remain either outdoors or in a very, very well ventilated area. It's critical for those appliances. That's what they're designed for. When it comes to turning your power on, what I would do is I would probably start with turning everything off at the switchboard. That's something that anybody can do. Obviously, if you're in a house that's been flooded, maybe definitely get a registered electrical contractor in or an electrician in to have a look for you. But basically, you would probably start turning them on one at a time, circuit breakers, or putting fuses in. And just remember, if a circuit breaker does trip, if it does activate, if a safety switch does trip or does activate, there's a problem. Don't go looking for it, don't try and fix it yourself. I can't stress that enough. Solar panel installations, they pose a significant threat as well. Once again, like your portable generator, they are a mini power plant. They generate electricity. It's exactly what they're designed for. So be aware of any damage to cables that come from the solar panels up on your roof. There are inverters that are mounted on the walls which may be affected. If you've got solar and you've been flood affected, I would call a registered electrical contractor in. Did you come and check the electrical of your house, including the solar installation, just to make sure that it checks out. I guess that's pretty much it for me, but I'm sure there'll be questions afterwards. Thank you.
And Sam, you had a reference paper there that's online. Sam, you had a reference paper that looked like it was available online for people. You want to promote that?
Sorry about that. Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Keith. Yes, look, for those people that are here, there is a flyer just outside the double doors. This was only put together very quickly on Friday evening. I'm not too sure if it's online, but I will be making phone calls after this just to double check. Energy Safe Victoria, you can just Google ESV online and it'll come up straight away. I think it's the first one. So ESV, Energy Safe Victoria, and it should be there. And if it's not, it will be there tomorrow. Thank you.
And we'll endeavour to make sure that the council website has that link as well. So that's the last of our panel here, and I'm just going to ask for some questions from the floor at this particular point in time. We do have a microphone that's roving, so if there's any questions from the participants in the room in the first instance, could you put your hand up and come towards one at a time towards the microphone, and we'll endeavour to answer those questions. Yep. Thank you. If you just give us your first name so we can address you appropriately. Thank you.
I can come to you, Chair. I'm Stephen Ruff. I'm from Berry Street. Now, I was part of a flood management study from 96 to 2000. This is the complete study here. In it, things that were implemented were a flood warning system that was implemented in 1996 at a cost of $360,000. I want to know what happened to that, why it didn't go off. There's other things too that probably it should go back to BOM, where the trigger points for that system were the rain gauge stations. One was at Mount Tassie, another one at Cornella, and another one right up past Leroy. When we looked at them, the only ones that were working were at Mount Tassie and Traralgon South, which is probably Cornella. I think something must have gone wrong with the one right up past Leroy. Well, because there's nothing on it. So these are the things, they were the things that were implemented to trigger the alarm system to sound, sirens, everything. When it reached a certain level of rain, it triggered the system. Never happened. No one got any calls, no text messages, nothing.
Yeah, I might start. I know that a lot of local flood warning systems have been superseded with technology, and there's processes in that. I don't know the circumstances of here. I might refer to the council for some advice there. I will say from the BOM's perspective, they gave us, particularly on Thursday night, reasonably accurate information about the potential for that rainfall, hence why we put the flood warning out earlier the night before, which advised that there was a potential for that severe rain. I can't comment on what gauges were working or not. I do know Mount Tassie was certainly involved in that calculations and the like.
Most of the rain that comes down the creek, though, comes from up past Leroy.
Yeah, and they would have averaged out all the gauges they had available to them at the time as part of their modelling. It goes into a computer modelling system which identifies the risk, tied in with the hydrology with the gauges. On Thursday, as I said, and I'll just to give a bit of an illustration, it was going like that, and then it went something like that. Yeah. So we don't know why that happened so quickly, and that was where, as I've already explained, where there was the challenges with getting timely stuff up.
I know that the same thing happened in '93, exactly the same thing, where it went along and just peaked.
So basically, the other thing is, I do know last night one of the river gauges became faulty, and sometimes that happens with debris and all of that sort of stuff. And that was one of the reasons today why we delayed lifting the evacuation warning, because we weren't sure how much water was coming down, and we kept that in place until we started getting readings further down, and the rain had stopped enough, and the calculation of the travel time, it was safe to say people could go back to the area. So we were doing our best. I don't know if Steve has the answer. It might be one we need to take on notice. But Steve, are you able to elaborate as to what might have happened for the previous system?
That is a question, sorry, Mr. Rugg, I'll have to take on notice in terms of what happened on this occasion, in terms of, as was pointed out, in terms of the data that I saw, which actually I was offline and didn't actually see it until very late. It had already passed. It was a very, very sharp curve in terms of where the increases, but in terms of the other gauges, in terms of whether they were operating or not and how that manifested itself, is something I have to take on notice and follow up for you.
I know that Council do have a copy of this now, because I brought it up with Councillor Callaghan in 2012, and Council knew nothing about it. They went into the archives, no copy of it. It had just vanished. So you've got a copy of it now because I supplied it. Now I also know that in 2016 there was another study done. That was with West Gippsland Catchment and Council. What came of that?
All the latest studies, just to explain briefly, we have the Bureau Hydrology has access to studies as part of their modelling and their thing, but in an incident management arrangement, both at the incident and at state level, we also have other, what I call flood analysts, specialists in hydrology and that. They also have access to those studies which help us do the localisation if it's missing in the Bureau's things. And we've had the Catchment Management Authority for here, as well as those consultants helping us with those predictions and validating the Bureaus or adding local context based on those latest studies.
So in a couple of the recommendations from this report was they were implemented. That was the sculpting out of the creek bank from George Street, Berry Street, George Street area, the removal of trees, but now no one wants to take responsibility for the number of trees that have now been planted down along the creek. And we know for a fact that when you plant trees there, they slow the water and spread it. So I want to know if those trees can be removed. After it was sculpted out, the water came through, went through quickly. Now it's held up again.
That might be some detail that needs to be followed up and brought back to you, but Steve.
Yeah, thanks, Keith. I am aware of the West Gippsland. It's the floodplain management strategy, which had some specific actions in terms of watercourses within Latrobe City, for example, and it's not related to Traralgon Creek in this instance. There is one action there. There's one related to Waterhole Creek. There was actions there in terms of widening and removing a footbridge, which is some work's happened on that one. In terms of the Traralgon Creek, from memory, there was to be a review of whether the bypass of Traralgon could incorporate some form of structure into the future. But I think that was the actions that were limited to Traralgon Creek. So the current strategy is the one was developed by the West Gippsland Catchment Management Authority. In terms of actions related to trees on that in that waterway, that is something that we can take up with the West Gippsland Catchment Management Authority. We don't have, or council doesn't have the ability to step in and just remove vegetation without any approvals. And outside of the townships, we don't actually have that level of involvement. So it is something we can take up though on notice in terms with the CMA.
Council, and I've brought it up with the West Gippsland Catchment. Neither of them know who gave the authority to plant the trees. It's just unbelievable. The trees are gum trees. They're 8 foot apart, just wall to wall. A couple of the other recommendations from this was when the Wright Street footbridge was to be built, to look at putting a levee bank around the Berry Street, George Street area to protect that area. Never went ahead. There was also earmarked that houses were to be bought. The ones over in Whittaker's Lane area, yes. There was 217 Franklin Street was earmarked too, but now there's a house there.
I'm happy to take that question on notice around that strategy. In terms of, I suppose I was curious as to whether the new floodplain management strategy, which is the West Gippsland Catchment Management one, whether that's actually taken precedent. There's some actions in that, and some of those that you've touched on I don't think came into that new strategy, but it's certainly something I'm happy to have a look at with you.
Yeah, well, see, this was the thing that when this came to light, they'd sort of go, oh, maybe it would have been implemented before, you know, if we'd known about this, but no one had a copy of it except me.
Yeah, so I suppose normally when a new strategy is developed, they look back at the old one. Whether that occurred is something I need to follow up with the CMA to see what action should have come from the previous strategy into the new one. So I have certainly have much stronger awareness of the current strategy, and I know that references, for example, in Waterhole Creek I touched on, and we've done some works there in terms of widening and taking away a footbridge or raising it. There's a future one to be done. It also, as I said, mentioned some potential future investigation around whether a basin could be developed on the south side of a highway duplication into the future. They were a couple of actions I recall. I'd need to go back and have a bit more look at the rest of the strategy to see if there was any other actions that came from that one or that should be considered as part of the Traralgon Creek works into the future.
Okay, well, we're on that topic. I think we've got some things we need to get back to you and the local community, which council's undertaken to. But thank you for your questions, and we'll try and get further answers. Thank you.
Worries.
Is there anyone else in the room? Just while you're coming forward, I'll just go to a couple that are online. So Ray has asked, can the residents in Gwalia Street return yet? I've just checked with, or got my local friendly police senior sergeant to check back to the ICC for me. The advice is that Gwalia, Peterkin and Campbell Streets are currently open and clear of debris. So I think I've answered that question. So if you could give us your first name and...
Hayley.
Thanks, Hayley. Come forward to the microphone.
Hi, my question is for the council as well. I own a business in the Traralgon Centre Plaza car park. A severe weather event was forecast and there was a phone call made to the council about the issue with the drain in the front of the Traralgon Centre Plaza. And the council failed to act on that. And we believe the three traders down there whose businesses are now washed out, there's been some severe negligence there. Given that, the warnings and whatnot were not acted on and nothing was done about it.
Steve.
Thanks, Keith. I think I've got most of the understanding of that. So again, there's probably a question I have to take on notice as to when that occurred and what happened. I suppose Keith did touch on as part of any incident like this, there'd be a review. So from my perspective, that's something we'll be looking at what actually happened from our end. We've been busy, I suppose, responding. I have asked a number of questions about the process, but the staff are still out doing lots of clearing and other works at the moment. So that is something that I will have to take on notice, but I'm happy to catch up with you and get some more details from you and have a look at what actually occurred in that instance and whether, in terms of that clearing, that would have helped or contributed to reducing flooding in particular areas.
The drain was blocked and it was made aware the day before. And it was just the warnings were just basically on deaf ears from the council. So now we're without, like my business is full of water from the sewer, and there's 2 other business owners that cannot trade either. Yep. So what compensation are you going to give us?
So in terms of disappointing you, if there was a response, typically in terms of drainage maintenance requests, it goes into a program. If it's something that needs to be done immediately, it should be addressed within a certain time frame. So there's things that I can follow up in terms of that level of detail to find out what actually occurred in this instance and what our normal response would be for those sorts of matters where there's a blocked drain, for example. So it's something I'll need to take on notice and get back to you on.
No worries, thank you.
Thank you for that, and obviously the council will make sure we've got we'll only use first names here because it's streaming, but we'll make sure council's got your contact detail. But before you go, Lauren, is there any support from government been announced yet or are being considered for businesses that might have been affected? Pick up the microphone, please.
There's support being discussed at a state level for people that have personal hardship needs, not specifically for businesses through our organisation, but I think that Steve will be able to get some details and have a discussion around business supports one-on-one with you.
No worries, thank you.
That's certainly something that we can put into the feedback up to state for issues where those things might need some support. Anyone else in the room, please?
My name's Mark.
Sorry, I missed your name.
My name's Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
I've been a resident in the affected area for about 18 years. Mm-hmm. The last time that we were flooded out was I'm very sorry to say I'm hearing a lot of the same thing over and over again. Yes, it was a peak. Oh, yes, we didn't have any notice. We seem to be in the age of communication, whether it be Twitter, Facebook, phone calls, mobile phones, the whole lot, even down to a door knock. I've been woken up. A gentleman was saying earlier that they had a briefing at 5 o'clock in the morning. I got a phone call at 6 o'clock in the morning from my neighbour telling me to get my butt out of bed. But I put my trousers on, looked for my keys, grabbed my keys. By that stage, my car was underwater and I couldn't get off my property. Now, it seems to be that the shower has a close the gate after the horse is bolted type of deal. When it comes to this sort of thing, I understand that, yes, it was a very big, a very big weather event, but you could have just looked out in the window and said, all right, because we were given a moderate flood warning. Moderate usually means for us on Whitakers Road and Milton Court, Moonabeel, all around there, that it's just going to be under the viaduct's going to get a bit wet. Down the streets, the river's going to rise up a bit and probably flood the creek. This time, I've never seen it this bad. It was like everybody in this room has either lost their house, their car, everything. As for the SES, noticeably absent. I'm sure people would like to have them at the next meeting. That'd be really great. As you can imagine, I'm quite a little bit emotional, but I just want to know what the strategy is going to be from the Latrobe City in coming months. You said there was 4 people working around the clock.
No, that was the number of people in the warnings area, and they were putting out warnings across most of the region. There was a staffed ICC, but as we started to realise how quickly it was coming, it went from moderate to major in a very short period of time, and it wasn't like it was gradually going up, it just went straight up.
It spiked.
So we certainly responded, and obviously the first response was about rescuing people, and as it got more obvious, and remember we were working in the dark, as it became more obvious, that's when we started to move out and do other things.
Well, it's, I mean, it's very hard to preempt Mother Nature, but I still, like last time that we got a knock, that I got a knock on the door, it was for a moderate flood thing.
Yeah.
He said, "Look, mate, it's a moderate, but you may want to start looking at getting your cars out, getting a few bits and pieces, putting things up on bricks." That could have been done this time, and it would have saved a lot of people a lot of money.
Yeah, and I suppose, look, I have to accept if something had come around during the night, it would have been an improvement. But we've also been having these documents out for quite some time as an initiative since the last flood, which actually gives that advice to people.
When were they distributed?
This is the latest one that came out last year, and it's been electronic. But there was one previously as well.
Was that sent out to emails?
I don't believe so, no, but it was actually, I might ask Jane, was there any, because it was COVID when it was finished, was there any?
It was distributed via electronic means, so on social media, so the council's...
Social media, okay.
Yeah.
So the people without... Yeah, so the people without social media, they wouldn't have received it? No. No, okay.
Okay, we acknowledge that, a lesson learned we need to look at.
Yep. Just another thing too with the cleanup. I understand that the city is very under the pump, and they've had to go through other means with clearing the roads and all that sort of jazz. Perhaps they could have a person going around after the contractors have been through and actually having a look, because I've seen quite a few streets that they've just gone, oh yep, do a bit of a loop, off we go. Oh, there's a car there, I can't get around that car, so I'm just going to go in a straight line and leave about this much bloody crap all over the roads and everything.
Yeah, and at this stage it is urgent clean-up, and if they can't, I'm sure there's an attempt to come back and do more, because as we phase back and move in, we're dealing with the things that get roads open first, get people access and extra, but I'll just ask Steve from the council as to plans in relation to that restoration of as much as possible.
Yeah, so I suppose in terms of clean-up, if there's street sweeping, I know it's had some of that's occurred, but if there was a vehicle in the way and that's been removed, we'll go back and do that cleaning. So there's, in terms of future clean-up, there's assessment that needs to be done with properties and so on, and a bit more work to actually undertake for us to assess what's required, but we will get back and do the clean-up we need to. In terms of the flood warning system, I suppose what might have existed in the past and what now exists does rely more on technology, as I understand, in terms of messaging out. I know, and I didn't get the messages in this instance because of the app. I didn't have internet connection, so that was, I suppose, the new systems that have been implemented is through emergency management processes where the warnings come up and people. So I'm not quite sure how that now operates in terms of door knocks and the like from SES or other agencies to let people know. It's not something that we're intimately involved in. The processes have sort of changed, so there probably is there's definitely more work around that education, I think, in terms of people understanding how that works. It's not going to, doesn't help in this instance for you, I understand. It's a very difficult time, but there are things I think that we can do more in the future, particularly around the clean-up, that we need to look at, as well as how do we actually get the right systems in place for the future.
So, sorry, I couldn't quite catch how many houses were were affected.
Just get my document again. Where'd I put it? I'll take it there. Sorry, just a moment. Yep. We assessed a total of 117 properties. Okay. Of that, we know that there were 21 overall areas affected, but 60 properties, and I don't know how many of them are domestic and how many of them are other, obviously, other than, the men shed's not a domestic, it would be in that figure, 60 properties with damage to structure.
Right. So, that's basically all I've got for you, but I really look forward to hearing from you in the near future.
Yeah, and look, I thank you for the way you've approached letting us know some of the concerns. And as I said, I've apologised where things weren't as quick as possible. But the emergency management sector in Victoria certainly works on a lessons learnt thing, and there will be a full review over this, and to make sure that the lessons we've learnt from this are documented and hopefully improve or aim to improve in future. Thank you for your time.
Appreciate it.
I'll just, before we get the next one into position, I'll just go to one from online as well. This is from Gary online. The publishing of road closures wasn't published well or at all. Who takes ownership of publishing road closures? Now, this is a process thing. As we get identified about a road closure in the ICC, it is added to the latest flood update. So each time we contextualise the Bureau, if you go to the Bureau page, you'll get the flood warning. If you go to the emergency Vic gap and those locations, there is extra information there as to the road closures that are known at the time of publishing that update. And the other one, it does say very clearly on those warnings for the latest road closures, it's going to the Vic Road site, and that's also available on the emergency Vic, on the Vic emergency app. So probably awareness of where that information is, and I do know the media, when they're aware of it, were broadcasting that as well. So unfortunately for Gary, we may have missed his connection, but there are ways and means of hearing it and also searching for it yourself. Thank you.
Alex, just a quick one around the recovery side of things. No, there's a lot of people affected, but I know I'm not alone. There's a lot of no one's got bins. The bins are floated, they're gone. Trying to clean up. Not sure if it's something that we can organise to get skip bins put around those areas, or something somewhere to put waste. Because yes, we're all more than happy, and lots of people, friends, family, want to come and help and clean up and all the rest of it. But you got nowhere to put it. So
no, it's a very valid question, thank you, and it's certainly part of the recovery process, isn't it? So I'll throw to you, Steve. We've got some technical difficulties. You might have heard a noise there. We're just trying to get...
It's a microphone. Oh, it's back
Try
on.
again,
Sorry.
thank you.
Got this one. Yeah, so that's different. I think it was working. Something that we have. Look, I suppose as part of the recovery process, we are looking for support from our government agency in terms of grants. So there's a process that we can apply, but in the short term, I think that's something we can certainly look at in terms of whether it's, given the bins have washed away, whether there's something in terms of replacement bins or a skip system. So something I'll talk to my team about.
just one more, sorry. Not probably for my sake, but there's other people out there who will be looking to put their name on a list or something for assistance. Technology is not everyone's best friend, and a lot of people avoid it. Maybe another suggestion is to talk to elderly people or something around all the affected areas, door knocks, give them information, because people are very much in the dark at the moment if they don't have technology.
Yeah, and that's certainly under consideration as part of going forward. Now we've sort of come out of the hurry up stage. It's certainly, and there was a meeting about those sorts of things across the region as well as for here just before this meeting, but I might throw to Council about actions that they might cover.
Yeah, so it's something that we are very conscious of in terms of, even with the pandemic, not everybody's had access to technology and so on. So we've been doing a newsletter, but across that issue. But so it is. I know there's a newsletter that's now proposed. There's a suggestion that council takes it on. So that would be something we could work with the newspaper on, as well as deliver to people's homes, particularly in those key affected areas. But more so, given there's broader issues across the city, just something more general that is available in writing. Because as you said, there are a section of the community who don't have access to technology.
I'm happy to add to that too, if that's all right. So, yeah, it's a really good point, Alex. There's a lot of community members out there that are seeking information and that can't get it through social media. So Red Cross, VCC and Salvation Army are looking at how to actually physically go out and provide information through outreach to people, with a really key focus on vulnerable people, our elderly community, and people that have been heavily affected. So really hoping to get that off the ground ASAP. How we get that and communicate out that to you is, as a collective, what we need to come up with now, but we're really hoping to see people out there knocking on doors, talking to people face to face in a COVID-safe way, imminently.
Thank you very much for your very thoughtful and helpful questions for your community. So just while we're looking for anyone else in the room, I've got one from Kate. Is it safe to remove sandbags? And I think I'll cover that one. As we stand today, as the water's starting to recede today, yes, it probably is. But given the opening comment where I said there's another weather front coming through later in the coming week, it probably might be prudent to keep them on your site just in case, rather than just empty them onto the garden at this particular point. Do we have any more from in the room? Oh, yeah, there is one. Don't want our police superintendent to get left out. It's from Doug and Joe. Is there any thought of restricting impacted areas to local traffic only? Is there any thought of restricting impacted areas to local traffic only?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? And certainly when you have fires, we want to get people back into their communities as quick as we can. No different in regards to this, especially in the rural areas, but it's a difficult one because the roads we have closed need to be assessed. Once they've been assessed, we can open them if they're safe. Limiting access to the general public is not something that we're able to do per se, other than if there's a danger at the end of the road. So probably not in that regard. We've just got to, but we are very mindful of the fact that the people will be out just having a look at the devastation whilst everyone else is trying to rehabilitate themselves and work with us. So we just ask you, if you've got concerns about people driving down your road that probably shouldn't be there, or maybe potentially looting or otherwise, give Triple R a call straight away. And we've got quite a few police out and about at the moment, so we'll respond to that as quick as we can.
Thank you, Peter. And I've got one more, which will probably be the last, unless there's one that comes in quickly or comes up from in the room, from a person obviously with the social media title Little Cats. I don't think our cat community can type yet. Where do you find latest flood reports in real time? So I'm taking that about warnings and advice and those sorts of things. There's two places to get. The Bureau publishes them as soon as they have come to they've run the models, they've got some confidence that this is going to happen or potentially not happen, and they publish them on the Bureau of Meteorology site. We get them at the same time that they're publishing them, and in day-to-day business, the SES duty officer will look at them and prepare an extended version with local context where we have information as to what people locally should be able to do. That is published onto the Vic Emergency app, which is either online, and I know we've talked about social media, but again, it's also about community. If you've got friends who aren't using it, if you could pass those things on if you hear about them. That will go up. Once we're into an incident control centre, that's taken over by the Public Information Centre. And as I said, this time up until this morning, we'd put over 300 messages out on that system. So that happens, and what usually happens with our emergency broadcaster partners, they pick up both of those documents, and certainly the ones that come out from the Vic Emergency app, and they read the main parts for it. But sometimes because of the commitments on them, they may not have the detail down the bottom. So if you hear that on the radio, you can go and get the more updated information about that. So that's how to keep up to date as best we can in the actual time of events. So I have no more questions in front. I'm just checking if there are any more coming in online. So for those in the room, I'll just ask Lauren from the council and those online, where you can get more information later, where our responses will be. We are flagging at this stage time to be determined because we're having another community meeting elsewhere in Gippsland as well on Monday, probably not first thing in the morning. As soon as we know that, we'll publish that out to people, and we'll do follow-up, and others that might not have been able to be here today will have the opportunity to access the panel people here, and there are some community liaison officers outside. Will be available for one-on-one questions for the people in the room, and Lauren will provide information for both you and the people online as to where they can get ongoing information about this event.
Thanks, Keith. As Keith mentioned, there is a newsletter that the Incident Control Centre has put together that's now on the council website and can also be accessed through social media as well. Certainly appreciate the point that Alex made that there are many people that can't access electronic means. We'll be printing off hard copies and making those available around the place, including at council facilities. We have an email address that we've set up solely for this purpose, for people to communicate directly with us. Our CEO mentioned the email address before. I'll just reiterate it again. It is flood2021@latrobe.vic.gov.au. We'll put that out on our social media and also make it available in the newsletter for hard copies as well. And a number of the questions that we couldn't get to this afternoon, or indeed were perhaps covered off through the various panel members, we'll put up some FAQs as well for people to reference. Please don't hesitate to reach out on that email address. Our customer call centre has been manned by our staff today. That's now closed for business hours today. That call centre will be manned again over the week, Sunday and the public holiday. So that's 1300 367 700, and those operators will be able to put you through to council officers who can assist you with your inquiries as well.
And just one more time, that number was pretty quick, Lauren.
Oh, sorry, Keith. Sorry, I was trying to remember it. So 1300 367 700. It's also up on our website as well, and we'll have it in the newsletter for hard copies also.
Okay, and before I close the meeting, just because safety is really, really important, we've just got one more comment from Sam about where the information's available.
Thanks, Keith. Yeah, as I said before, just there's more information available on the ESV website in relation to your generators, your gas safety and electricity safety. If you go to esv.vic.gov.au, you can also find it on our Facebook page, and the Vic Emergency web page also has it. It's in the Relief Recovery tab. So please take some time out to have a look at that document and ensure your safety. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you all who've turned up here today, and those of you who are listening online today. We'll endeavour to get back those the answers to those questions we've taken on notice. And I thank those people, particularly in attendance, for your patience and your respectful way you've dealt with this, considering the emotional and turmoil that you've been through the last couple of days. We understand that. We're not feeling it ourselves, but we are trying our best to help you through it. And that is not just me, that's everyone up here and all our agencies and the other agencies that aren't up on the room. We know they're all working, and the staff in those agencies in particular are working flat chat, very long hours, trying to get some control over what's going on and trying to get it back to near normal. Thank you very much for your attendance today. If any of you want to talk to us one-on-one, we do have our COVID safety advisor in the room, so we'll move around the room and just if we can just approach in one or two people at a reasonable distance with masks on, we're happy to talk to each of you individually if there's any particular concerns. Thank you all, and that completes the meeting for today.